a light in the sky, rising in the air. There's a feeling so strong. It's time to light the fire, like a bright shining light. Getting more out of life, sharing time with friends, feeling so strong.
Hello, welcome to the House of Wellness. I'm Luke Darcy and it's great to see you again. Joe Stanley, how are you?
Awesome to see you also, Darce. And I do love our weekly greetings, but okay, in a post-pandemic world, what's okay? Are we allowed to shake hands? Are we hugging? Can we kiss hello? I don't know how it works anymore.
Yeah, well, it's confusing, isn't it, at times? It's, you know, probably confusing in the best of times. I've got mates who are huggers,
yes,
genuine huggers, and so you give them a hug. Other mates are not up for that, but I'm still going the handshake. Surely we're allowed to shake hands, aren't we?
Oh, I don't know. My daughter's football, when the teams line up now, they do this.
This one?
Yeah, not allowed to shake hands after. I don't know. One thing I'm more conscious of now, though, and I know many other people are too, is buying locally. It's one of the great things to have come out of the pandemic. It creates jobs, pumps money into the local economy, plus we have access to some of the highest quality items in the world. Yeah,
it is a great thing we can all agree on, isn't it, to try and shop locally and support those close to us. I also think the pandemic shifted consumers' values from focusing on the individual to a more collective mindset, and we don't want to be so reliant on other countries for goods and services. And as you say, Joe, we have great quality produce and goods right here.
And that more than applies to our local produce. Go to any region across the country and you'll find farm gates, markets and food festivals all celebrating the best seasonal produce. And you know what else? It just tastes better.
It always does when you get it from close to the source. Well, they say that the only thing more satisfying than a really great meal is rolling up your sleeves and finding the ingredients yourself, Joe.
Well, the big trend over the past couple of years has been foraging for wild food. There's a treasure trove of free food to be found along local coastlines, forests, or even in your own backyard.
And some of the world's top chefs are jumping on board and turning out some incredible dishes.
One of those is executive chef and expert forager Elijah Holland, who's your go-to guy for anything about mushrooms, by the way. Elijah heads Melbourne's fine dining restaurant Lume, which sources ingredients from just about every region in Victoria. And then he builds a menu around that region that's made up of everything he's found there. Luke Hines travelled to the Bass Strait Coast to witness the famous forager in action.
There's not too much downtime in the life of an executive chef, but even when Elijah Holland is out of the kitchen, he's still working.
Elijah, what are we looking for when we're foraging for seaweed?
Well, look, with looking with seaweed, you want to make sure, first of all, that if you're, harvesting or getting from areas that you do have any of the right permits that you might need if you need to do it. But also, if you're just collecting different seaweed, more about trying to get shore cast seaweed. So, beach cast seaweed that's already kind of washed up or it's broken loose and coming apart. And then there are species that are non-natives and they're actually overtaking some of the ecosystems. And species like that, then, they're more better to be able to cut loose and take. But if there's hardly any seaweed at all, well, we don't want to be just trying to destroy any ecosystems or anything like that. This one is golden kelp, or Eclonia radiata. And it's a really lovely species of kelp. It's a little bit thinner and smaller than the big bull kelp.
So as it is, really tough, really dense, what are we doing to this to get it to its basic, most edible form?
Yep. So what I would be doing first with it, I would be roasting it to really caramelise and get all those flavours intensified, and then just drying it out. It can even be eaten just as is. Or if you wanted to make some chips for yourself, you could be spraying it with something, putting some extra flavours on it. But for me, I like to use it as a powder and as a seasoning or a spice. So this is another little favourite one of mine. These ones, they're like the little capers of the sea. So with seaweeds, and especially this one, you want to make sure that you're harvesting in small amounts so you don't detach it from the rocks whatsoever, and you just remove a couple of the little kind of segments.
Yeah.
So this, if you just break off one of these and have a little eat of one of these, and it just tastes, it's like a little salty little caper. So it's like it's caper of the ocean, and if you get some of the bigger ones, they just
explode in your mouth.
They just explode with this beautiful kind of salty, crisp flavour.
Wow.
But it's a great little addition to seafood dishes, pastas, throw them in pastas whole. They're really beautiful pickled as well, or just to add as a little fresh element to something.
I'm in.
That's it.
Elijah's whole food philosophy is to combine wild ingredients from the same ecosystems. And these sand dunes are covered in a forest of food.
How many varieties would you say are kind of amongst us right now?
Oh, right now there's well over 15 to 20 different varieties that we just specifically actually even use in and around on the restaurant.
Wow. All edible.
All edible,
On
yeah.
the menu, sweet and savoury.
That's it, sweet, savoury and drinking.
Wow.
Okay.
What's this one, mate?
So this one's some beautiful bower spinach. So in the same family as warrigal greens, which is kind of its big brother, but is more up north. This is kind of the creeping, crawling one of, you know, the lower states down here. But it's got these really beautiful, crisp, succulent-y leaves.
Yeah.
Not only just really good, I think it's a lot better replacement for baby spinach or, you know, a green like that. And the flavour's a lot better, and it really holds up the texture a lot more. You know, with baby spinach or even English spinach, sometimes you just wilt it and it just goes to nothing. This, you can feel it really holds up. So this is strong enough to be able to throw on a hot grill, you know, and toss in a pan or, you know, whatever else you might want to do. Or also, it can go on the other side as well, because it's got all these salty, hearty flavours. This one is actually I use on the menu, and what we do is we candy and crystallise the leaves, and we make them part of one of the little desserts we have on the menu that's called a trip to the Bass Strait Coast.
I feel like this is the perfect example of nature knowing best. Here we are out in the elements, and it's absolutely thriving.
All these wild plants, because you haven't been, you know, once again, watering them, fertilising things, they have to send the roots deeper. So that means the plant is more struggling to survive, so it has to really fight for its life. And in doing so, it finds more nutrients and minerals, which in turn makes the plant tastier. Another interesting one here, seaberry saltbush. There's the beautiful leaves. They can be eaten and they're edible. And then also you have with this one as well, the beautiful kind of berries on it as well. And this saltbush is actually really interesting because although it's called a saltbush, it's actually in the beetroot family. And it has these really moorish kind of flavours of roasted, cooked, but sticky, almost bitter beetroot with these beautiful little berries that are on it. You can have a little taste, but it's very kind of strong, and it can be a little bit bittersweet. This, we actually get it and collect it, and we turn it into a vinegar, and we use it on as a little fresh salad with gooseberries and saltbush, and all together with a bit of seawater.
Okay, so we're using this part of it, but also the leaves. Is this about minimal wastage? Are we using as much of the plant as possible?
Absolutely, and I think that's a very important thing with any foraging that you do. Rather than just only taking off the leaves, we try to use the leaves, we use the flowers, and we use the berries as well.
Now, before we all go down to the beach and start hacking at the closest bush, it's important to note that Elijah has spent years learning what's what.
I mean, I learned a lot from my parents, but over the last 8 years as being a chef, I really started to explore and try to find out about everything that was around me. So when I'd go out hunting or go diving or spearfishing, I was always interested in the plants that would grow in and around. And especially as being a chef, you know, you notice some similarities and you go, oh, I wonder what that is. You know, can I eat that, or what can you do with it? But the interesting thing is every day you find more and more and more edible different species, and then the health benefits from them you find are just amazing.
I'm astounded by what Elijah was finding and identifying as food. Plus, he knows what to do with it, so you get the best and the most unusual flavours. His knowledge base is just so impressive to us.
Sure is. Now, hold that thought, Joe, because Elijah is going to prepare some kind of amazing dish from the seaweed and the plants that he found on that trip, and we'll see the results of that a bit later on in the show.
If you want to see more of the forage food dishes that Elijah creates, check out his Instagram. And if you're inspired to forage yourself, go out with an expert, because some plants, particularly mushrooms, are poisonous.
Good advice there, Joe. Up next, we meet the Aussie playground entrepreneur who's bringing joy to kids all around the world. That's right here on the House of Wellness.
A few weeks ago, we had playground designer Marcus Veerman on the show. His custom-made playgrounds are making millions of kids happy all around the world. And now he's back with his latest innovation, a playground in a box.
We wanted to create an instant, absolutely no compromises, sort of super engaging playground, but in a package that was easy to get, and super easy for teachers to use to make sure that it would, wouldn't sit in the cupboard, but actually was used on a daily basis with kids. So that became the noodle cart. And the idea behind that is that we want kids to use their noodle, which was sort of, and to noodle around, right? We had these two kind of concepts of, that's why it became the noodle cart, because it's one thing for a teacher to tell you what to do. It's a whole other level of learning when you are self-motivated. Yeah. If you think about that thing you want to do in the house or that thing you're tinkering with and you work out, okay, I'm going to go to that hardware store and get that little thing and I'm going to put it together with this. The learning in that is super deep, and it's where it all comes together into reality. Do you know what I mean? Like it's not hypothetical, it's real deep learning, and we want kids to do that every day, and that's what the noodle cart does. It gives them a space instantly, whether they're in the classroom or outside, to bring together all of their learning and understanding to create and prototype and innovate in a space.
Marcus, I had a look at the video to put the noodle cart together. Now, I may be the most hopeless person ever and can't change a light globe. Beyond me, but
I don't believe it.
No, you need to believe that it's not.
Okay, right.
Can the kids themselves build the cart, or?
Well, so putting the cart together, when you can buy it flat packed. For you, I'd suggest buying it assembled, no problem.
You can do that.
Yeah, you can do that. So we offer that option. And so when it's put together, you can basically just bring it into a classroom or put it outside in the playground, and kids can unpack it, use it for hours on end, and then put it back together, put all the pegs back in and just roll it back inside. So we actually have schools where they have monitors, and at the end of lunchtime, the kids actually manage that whole space. And they're super motivated to do it because it's a bit like a giant puzzle, so it's really fun to put back together again. Yeah. So the way it's used is you just pull out all the parts. Well, the kids can do that. You just roll it into the middle of the room, and we just say, look after yourself, look after your mates, and look after the cart. And that's kind of it. The kids just... Some teachers might feel nervous about that, but actually children know exactly that play drive is so strong. If you create an open-ended environment, they will just go hell for leather in learning. And we really encourage teachers just to stand back and to just observe, even get a clipboard and just walk around and just start ticking off the curriculum areas that those kids are doing. Are they measuring? Are they using levers? Are they doing basic maths or literacy or whatever? It's clear in that. And then we encourage teachers as a second point to use that child-directed energy to springboard off into curriculum. So instead of doing it the other way around, right, where you
I love it. I love
it,
it, mate. I mean, the curriculum is so prescribed, isn't it? And the rote learning aspect of it and the textbooks, having my own kids go through school, those textbooks haven't changed in 20 or 25 years, whereas what you're doing is allowing that open creativity and getting kids to
teachers are doing it. I think the curriculum hasn't changed dramatically. Certainly not as much as I'd like to see it change, particularly in terms of social skills, well-being and EQ. We know that emotional skills and social skills are more correlated with success than IQ, right? And yet we spend so much of our time on the other. We just need to see more play-based, open-ended activities and the teachers using that energy to springboard into curriculum, because then you know where the kids are at in terms of their development, and you can actually teach things that are appropriate to where they're at, as opposed to just setting it down at the start of term and working through it and sort of slowly going bald with frustration as the kids are, because, you've got this huge spectrum of kids who are not there, right? They're not at the right level that you're teaching at. So why not do it the other way around, start from where the kids are and work from there? And the noodle cart helps you to do those assessments and observations.
So what's the most creative thing, Marcus, you've seen a young child do with noodle cart?
I love, I love the, in terms of big things, there was this big group of boys who just basically grabbed all of the boxes and built this enormous rocket and then covered it all up. And then they were all crammed inside this thing with this whole kind of, going to Mars and we're doing this whole thing, which I love that idea, like thinking about kids these days imagining, well, how are we going to, because they're hearing about all these, climate change and all these other things. So here's these kids kind of working out, well, how would I solve this problem and what am I going to do in the future? As well as, the little moments. I remember, and these two stories are going to sound very gendered, and it's not often this way, but these girls in Corryong, when we were doing the bushfire tour, created this whole runway strip and a whole fashion show, and they were dressed up and they created all these little characters and had these dances and performances and music, and it was just, just that for those guys, it was just a really joyful, beautiful, they were just totally in the moment, in that flow state of working with their friends to do something that was just really enjoyable. And that's the kind of stuff that particularly kids who've had a rough time, that we really need to see that every day in kids. I brought this is a really special part to me because I just wanted to quickly talk about one of the deeper parts of the design of the noodle cart. So originally, when we worked with Syrian refugees in Lebanon, in the refugee camps, we did some trials there, and that original noodle cart was put together with nuts and bolts. And nuts and bolts are great, but nuts and bolts have a meaning that we all ascribe to that piece, right? So we all know it's a nut and bolt. So when someone picks it up, they're like, this is a nut and bolt, I'm going to, put this together. I know you said you wouldn't know how to work that, but I'm sure, Joe, you'd be fine.
I'm familiar with a nut and bolt, yeah.
Yeah, so, but if you give them to children, they will also play with meaning with that thing. Now, they might, some really creative kids might use it for other things, but generally it'll be used as a nut and bolt to join things together. So in the next prototype, we actually removed nuts and bolts altogether, and this is one of the pegs that kind of jams into the different slots to hold things together like a nut and bolt would, but because it doesn't kind of look like anything, the child can also ascribe any other meaning to it, which again just gives them that depth of play. So they could say, well, I'm a super sleuth and I'm going to use it as a magnifying glass, or, I know a kid took a bit of our fabric and tied it around his head and put it in the top, and he's like, I'm a unicorn, I'm a unicorn. Or you could use it as a pair of glasses, or, I've seen kids use them as ice skates and slip around the carpet on the floor. So it was really important to us to design something that sort of hyper de-meaningfulized things. I don't even know what the word is, right? But it was really, every single piece doesn't look like something you've seen before to engage children's brains in creating that meaning so that every time they come to the cart, they have a different experience.
Marcus, it's an incredibly inspiring conversation. The work you're doing is amazing. Great to meet you today, and thanks for coming in and spending some time with us in the House of Wellness.
My absolute pleasure. Thanks.
Thanks.
We are back in the House of Wellness kitchen, where I've recruited a new sous chef, Matt Stenmark from Kind. Now today, mate, I need your help to show people at home how to make a popular takeaway staple in a really healthy way.
I can't believe that you're telling me that this dish, I think it's chicken related, is going to be made healthy.
You're spot on, mate. The recipe is popcorn chicken, but don't be fooled by the name because the ingredients in my version are really nutrient dense. We're talking a good quality source of zinc from the eggs. We've got vitamin C coming from the macadamias that are in the avocado salsa. And then we're talking things like collagen from the chicken thigh itself.
Now, you're right, Luke. We can get all of this goodness from the food that we eat that contribute to our health, but we don't always have enough time to be able to include it in our day. And that's why we've developed Kind Collagen Fort. That's got all those vitamins and minerals, but also biotin and silica, which contribute to healthy hair, skin and nails.
I've spent a fair bit of time with our beauty expert, Jade Kisnorbo, and she's always telling me how important it is to look after the health of our hair, skin and nails. So I feel like she'd be really proud of us right now.
I think she would too. We're doing something good here, but we also have an opportunity to do something good for others and for the planet too.
That sounds really interesting. Tell me more.
Yeah, so at Kind, we've got 3 pillars. We're kind to you, kind to the planet, and kind to others. And the way we do it is we start with ingredients based on scientific evidence to make it easy to be kind to you. And we also donate 1 for 1. So every product our consumers buy, we donate an immunity product to Australian in need. And lastly, we're kind to the planet by trying to reduce the amount of plastic that we use in our packaging.
Mate, your energy is contagious. I love this concept of doing good whilst looking good. And now, speaking of all things good, these taste good, but I've got to get them in the oven first.
You can easily get collagen and vitamin C and the others in your diet super easily with our Kind Collagen Fort. Mix into a smoothie so you can have it on the go.
Mate, and speaking of on the go, these are good to go. Now, I've heard a rumour with popcorn chicken, once you pop, you just don't stop.
Mate, I have to admit it, I'm an absolute advocate for fried chicken. I love the stuff.
I'm going to have to make double. The A to Z of vitamins is brought to you by Kind Collagen Fort. 2,600 milligrams of collagen in every serve, and where every purchase spreads kindness.
Now, Joe, I love all the Hinsey's food, but I think my favourite is the spicy little fish bites. Have you tried them before?
Oh, delicious, no.
Very good. Beck's cooked them a few times and they disappear very quickly in our house, which is always a good sign of success.
Yes, absolutely. I really love his crumbed cauliflower pieces. They are so easy. They just go straight in the oven. And same thing, when they come out, you're just like, oh, just, you know, so delicious. And now, a little while back, I had the pleasure of meeting South Australian footy legend Mark Micken. Mark was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease in 2016 and is now an ambassador for Parkinson's South Australia.
Mark was a legend. In fact, I really admired and looked up to Mark. He was a fantastic player. But sadly, his brother Kim also has the disease, which currently has no cure and affects around 100,000 Australians. And Joe, they say staying active can slow the progression of Parkinson's disease, and Mark is still very active, but he's one of the lucky ones. Getting to a gym isn't that easy for everyone.
It was Mark who put us onto Adelaide's Brain and Body Fitness Studio that gives members access to state-of-the-art equipment that's designed not just for the body, but to rewire and work out the brain as well.
As a former star of the AFL, Adelaide's Mark Micken knows all about the benefits of a regular exercise routine. But when he was diagnosed with Parkinson's in 2016, Mark struggled to find the motivation to keep active.
Nice, step to me.
I let Parkinson's sort of get the better of me and was in a situation where I wasn't doing much at all in terms of activity and movement, and I just got down a little bit about the whole thing.
That all changed last year when he discovered the Brain and Body Fitness Studio, which caters directly to people with Parkinson's.
9, 10, 3, 2, 1, stop there.
So in Parkinson's, as well as in other conditions, like ageing, we're all losing dopamine. It just so happens that in Parkinson's it happens more dramatically. Dopamine is responsible primarily for movement, but also for motivation and learning. So apathy and things like that are a huge problem in Parkinson's. So exercise actually improves a lot of the really difficult symptoms like apathy, motivation, depression, anxiety, gait.
The first thing that happens to you when you walk in the door is one of the exercise physiologists gets hold of you and they put you through a test or a series of tests in order to find out what exercises are safe for you to do and then what exercises are beneficial for you to do.
Hold that.
That's why coming here is so special, because everything's geared towards your own situation. And so for me, I do things that are specific for my right leg, which has got a bit of a mind of its own. So I need to be able to balance on my left leg, balance on my right leg equally well.
All right, bring it back down to about 60 for me.
Parkinson's can run in families.
And then when I say go...
Mark's brother Kim also has the disease and is reaping the benefits of a tailor-made exercise program.
Two of my key areas were balance and probably core strength. So cycling is highly recommended, just to keep the legs moving and to get the heart rate up and going, because the condition by its nature wants to slow you down, I believe.
Beautiful. All right, you ready to go on your own? Yeah. All right, off we go. So 9,
The physical part of the program is just the start. The brain gets just as much of a workout.
There we go, good. Good, leaning forward.
Back in the day, we thought that the brain couldn't be retrained, but it actually can. And so we used evidence-based exercise, so exercise that's had research projects done to show that they encourage new neural pathways in your brain. And sometimes that means combining things. So sometimes we combine physical movements with thoughts, and so we might be having someone answer a question whilst they're trying to complete a physical task. And that dual tasking encourages that neuroplasticity that we're looking for.
Give me a car starting with C.
Since opening a year ago, Brain and Body Fitness Studio has gained over 100 members, including people with acquired brain injuries, multiple sclerosis and motor neuron disease.
Grabbing onto the strap wherever you comfortably can.
Eventually, Parkinsons SA are hoping to expand the social enterprise across the state with a goal of reducing hospital and aged care admissions.
The people that go there are now so confident in what they can do in terms of exercise that they're, going for personal bests and, really trying to extend themselves. And, the risk is too many easy ways of getting out of it. You could say it's too cold, it's too wet. But, if you know that 11 o'clock on Monday morning I've got to be here, I'll go around to Kim's place, pick him up, and away we go. And, I think this place has been the saviour for not only myself, but all the other people that come here as well.
Good work. Neuroplasticity is such a fascinating field. Our brain's ability to grow and change throughout life and even form new connections if one area is damaged is just incredible. It's one of the reasons that they say if a person loses their sense of touch, their sense of smell may be heightened.
That is really fascinating, Joe, isn't it, for sure? And it's also fantastic, too, that any profit that the Brain and Body Fitness Studio makes goes back into Parkinsons SA to help fund their work to one day find a cure. We'll be back right after this.
Dr. Michelle Rodriguez, for those who have never visited a dermatologist, what actually is your role?
I would love to say just popping pimples, but it's a little more than that. So dermatologists are effectively medical specialists. We train in the diagnosis, prevention and management of skin conditions. And I guess we're best placed to be able to provide advice for people that are very young, so newborns, right through to the elderly in the community about how to best care for their skin and how to look after it throughout life.
Dermatologists often talk about the skin barrier. What role does it play?
So in a nutshell, the skin barrier is almost like a seal that locks all the good stuff in particular that's water, because the vast majority of a cell is made up of water. I kind of like to think of the skin like a brick wall. So you've got these little bricks, which are the cells, and then you've got stuff around them that hold them together, basically the mortar between the bricks. And the majority of that mortar is made up of these things called ceramides. And these ceramides are effectively lipids or fats. They're called sphingolipids. And what they do is try to lock moisture in when they're not there in adequate amounts, or if the concentrations are slightly off or the ratios are slightly off, we can end up in a situation where we've got dry skin.
So someone with dry skin should be cleansing their skin with a very mild cleanser, soap-free. Also applying a moisturiser every day is important. People are quite busy in their life and really they might not have time to apply multiple products and multiple applications. So CeraVe products are all quite minimalist in their formulation. They're free from irritants and fragrances, and every CeraVe product contains 3 ceramides. And it's delivered through this gradual release technology called the MVE technology. Also, an ingredient called hyaluronic acid is included in the formulations, and the skin loves this because it's very good at holding on to water molecules, which increases hydration within the skin. So CeraVe will allow healthy skincare for all because it does help improve hydration and the skin barrier function in an affordable, very convenient way, because once a day application can be sufficient.
Michelle, what are your tips for maintaining a healthy skin barrier?
So in addition to cleansing, moisturising, sunscreen, obviously it's really important to make sure that you're having short showers, cool showers, making sure that you're amending your environment to ensure that the skin is not getting dehydrated. And it's important to pick the right kind of moisturiser, because some people need something lightweight, something that doesn't sort of grease up the skin and block the pores. So if you have sort of acne-prone skin, if your skin is generally quite oily, then you might need something like a lotion. Generally comes in a pump pack. If, however, you have sort of dry skin or irritation, then you might need something that's a bit stronger, a bit more occlusive, a bit thicker. So something like a cream or an ointment base would be good. And generally speaking, they come in a tub with a screw top lid or in a tube. It's important to play around with the moisturiser, because at the end of the day, it's a bit like shoes. You know, if it doesn't suit you, you're not going to wear it. And if it's not comfortable, you're not going to wear it. But it needs to go on ideally every day. And it doesn't matter what your skin type is. It's the biggest organ. It has a huge impact not only on self-confidence and how people feel and interact and their relationships, but it actually reflects what's going on inside. So don't neglect it is the most important message.
Gerald Quigley there, helping put some moisture back into dry winter skin. And while we're on skin, Joe, you remember those teenage years that were a bit awkward where your skin starts breaking out a bit? What was your go-to treatment?
Oh, for pimples and acne, I do remember putting toothpaste on my pimples, and I don't know if there's any science to that whatsoever. My older sister told me to do that, so I did. It never really helped, I don't think. But pimples are typically associated with puberty and all the hormones and changes that brings. But exactly why do we get them? And more importantly, how do we get rid of them once they pop up their ugly heads?
Well, our own good doctor, Nick Carr, also suffered from acne as a teenager, and with his first-hand experience and expert knowledge, he couldn't find anyone more qualified in how to prevent and treat the pesky pimples.
There are a few secret pleasures about the human body, and one of them is giving a pimple a good old squeeze. Oh yes, the satisfaction of taking that little mound of yellow gloop and gone. When I was a teenager, I got my fair share of acne, but these days I seem to have traded pimply spots for old age spots. So what's going on here? Why does our teenage skin so often seem to erupt, only to get better a few years later? Well, a big chunk of the answer, of course, is hormones. And that's actually why up to 20% of babies also get a form of acne, because the hormones of pregnancy and breastfeeding can make their skin look like a 13-year-old's. Now, let's get a bit technical here. We have sebaceous glands concentrated on the face and the upper body, and the hormones of puberty cause them to react. And when they get blocked, hey presto, whiteheads and blackheads. And if those blocked glands get inflamed or infected, welcome to zits and pimples. Now, when I was a medical student, we were taught that there was no connection at all between acne and diet. These days, students are taught that there may be a connection for some people. So much for the advance of science. What we do know is that greasy skin has nothing to do with greasy foods. But for some people, there are foods like sugars, carbohydrates, and dairy that are what we call pro-inflammatory. So dermatologists often recommend trying to reduce these just to see if it helps. These days, we have some really effective treatments, so teenagers no longer have to put up with unsightly skin. So if the over-the-counter products aren't working, go and see your GP or even get a referral to a dermatologist. For some young women, the hormones in the contraceptive pill can be really helpful. On the other hand, testosterone supplements, which are popular with some bodybuilders, are really potent pimple producers. So back to squeezing that spot, and was your mum right when she told you not to do it? Well, the official line is that when we squeeze, we cause more inflammation deep in the skin, which is really bad, so don't do it. On the other hand, that little white one on the surface there, just don't tell anyone I said it was okay.
Pretty rough time, adolescence, Joe, when you think about it, isn't it? Everything's going on, the hormones, the skin, the growth spurts, the braces. It's a bit to deal with.
And struggling to find your fit, you know, your personality, your emotions. Everything's about whether or not you're accepted by your peers and your friends. It's just a minefield. Plus, it's a time of acute self-consciousness, how they look, how they come across to others, and they often feel like they're being judged by everyone around them too. It's just awful.
And of course, Joe, their brains are changing too. They're not fully developed, so they're thinking very differently from an adult. And it's easy to forget sometimes when you're confronted with an irrational teenager. I've got 3 in my house.
I was going to say, my daughter's not there yet.
No.
So have you got some advice for me?
I haven't got a lot of great solutions for you, Joe. I just tend to take the feedback that I get from my 16-year-old daughter and try my best.
Can you reason with a teenager?
No. Not at all.
I think people sometimes underestimate how important our eyes and our vision can be to us, but it's a really important sense and we rely on it every single day.
Optometrist Megan Zabel wants us to focus on eye health and the special role of tears beyond showing our emotions.
The tears are really important to the health and the vision of the eye. So they help to flush dirt and debris and pathogens off the front of the eye. The tear film's also really important in maintaining clear, precise vision. So dry eye can happen for a number of reasons. If we want to put it really simply, your eyes might not be making enough tears, or they might be making poor quality tears that end up evaporating off the front of the eye too quickly. One of the tricky things with dry eye is that the symptoms can be quite varied and inconsistent. Roughly speaking though, we know that the main symptoms of dry eye include red, gritty, sore, tired and dry eyes, obviously. We know that there are certain situations that will exacerbate dry eye symptoms or maybe even start them off for some people. This includes really dry or windy environments, when people have to use a lot of digital screens, so if they're in front of the computer or on their phone a lot.
And with 77% of Australians and 1.4 billion people worldwide suffering from the symptoms of dry eye, it's time to embrace a solution that may make a few of us squeamish.
When we're looking at an eye drop to help manage someone's dry eye, we want it to effectively relieve their symptoms. We want it to be appropriate for the type of dry eye that they have, and we want it to offer long-lasting relief from their symptoms as well. In order to understand the difference between these drops, we just need to know a little bit about the tear film. So the tear film actually has a really thin, oily layer on top and then a thicker, watery layer underneath that. Cysteine Ultra addresses the watery layer of the tear film for fast-acting relief of dry eye symptoms, whereas Cysteine Complete actually addresses both the oily layer and the watery layer of the tear film for relief of all types of dry eye symptoms. It can be easy to ignore the symptoms of dry eye, particularly at first, because they start off as just a minor inconvenience in our day-to-day life. So please don't hesitate to go and see your optometrist for anything to do with your eyes.
Luke Hines has been out foraging for not your average greens with Melbourne-based executive chef Elijah Holland. They've picked up a truckload of ingredients absolutely free from around the Bass Strait coast.
Plants and seaweeds and bits and pieces that I would step over and certainly never dream of picking, yet let alone putting it into a meal. So let's see how Elijah turned their bounty into the ultimate in fine dining.
Elijah, we're back here in the kitchen at Lumet, where the magic happens. Now, I want to see you put this dessert together. I have no idea how we're going to go from what we foraged to a beautifully presented dessert.
All right, so first we start with these really beautiful, specially crafted bowls made out of sandstone. Yeah. So to kind of reflect the image of where we get the whole dish from, so the beautiful kind of ecosystem and
Looks
cliffs.
like the cliffs.
Yeah, it really does.
Yep.
So we've got a bit of liquid nitrogen here. We're just going to pour into the bottom of the bowl.
Wow.
So next, we grab our beautiful aerated bull kelp parfait.
Oof, looks like honeycomb.
So this is meant to kind of mirror the images of the honeycomb, like the weather-beaten cliffs all around the Bass Strait coast, so the really rough, rugged Bass Strait coast. So this we've made with a couple of different types of kelp, some golden kelp that we collected the other day from the beach, and then a bit of beautiful beach cast bull kelp as well, that we roast and turn into this intense tea. Then that we make this intense kind of tea that we use as the perfume, and it makes it this beautiful kind of salted caramel kind of perfume and aroma that we use in our parfait. So we have our weather-beaten cliff of the ocean. Then we're going to come down here to our beautiful kind of rocks that fall underneath the cliff. Yeah. So we've got some beautiful wakame that we roast and turn into a powder, and then we put it into a light sponge, so you can see the beautiful bits of wakame all through it. Then the next ingredient here as well, we've got some beautiful pig face figs.
Like pig face that grows?
Yeah, exactly. So the pig face that grows, this beautiful succulent, has these lovely little figs on it. And it's like a salty, sweet fig and a strawberry, somewhere in between.
Okay.
So what we do is we mix that with just a tiny little bit of apple, and we make this really beautiful kind of leather with it. Then next we come over here, we've got a bit of our beautiful golden kelp that we've just lightly candied. So we just blanch it in a little bit of sugar syrup, and then we just dehydrate it.
None of this looks sweet. Is it a sweet dessert or...?
Yeah, so this is a mildly sweet and lightly saline dessert.
Okay.
So then the second or third final ingredient here, so a bit of our beautiful bower spinach that we picked from the beach. We've just candied the leaves, and then we're just going to place them kind of really lovely into the pig face fig leather.
How do you come up with this stuff? I mean, I'm looking at this. This isn't in a recipe book.
No, well, look, for me, the whole inspiration behind this and how it all comes together is nature. And nature is basically the artist that helps to create and bring this to the table. Because when you think about the ocean and the cliff there, it's a really rough and rugged area. So what we've tried to do in this dessert, I've really just tried to capture the essence of the harsh Bass Strait coast and the ocean and the weather there.
Wow.
The last little thing for this is we want the temperature of the bull kelp parfait to be the correct temperature that we want it served, and it has to be nice and kind of solid and crisp. So for this, we actually give it a good bit of nitro and we really chill the top of this.
You can feel it coming off it.
So, and then that is our little trip to the Bass Strait coast.
Well, Joe, we've seen Executive Chef Elijah Holland foraging all over the Bass Strait coast for these remarkable ingredients, and it has culminated in this piece of art in front of us now. I have to say, not only is it remarkable, I think this is the first time I've ever had seaweed for dessert.
Oh, I absolutely love it. And I love that Elijah wants us to better understand the ecology of the ingredients and that they were collected sustainably so that the ecosystems continue to thrive. It's such clever food.
It is pure genius. Now, I've been reading the menu, Joe, and I want to go through the lot. How about this from the Wimmera? Black lentils, wild fennel, daisies and horseradish. Sign me up for that. And from the Murray-Darling Basin, Murray cod, desert lime, old man saltbush. Just fantastic.
Beautiful. It just goes to show how diverse the state is and how much is at our fingertips if you know how to use it.
Yeah, and it's not as though Elijah and his team have got a small task. You imagine going out and trying to find all these ingredients all around the country.
But look at it, it just looks amazing. And you're right, it's almost entirely seaweed, which of course is so good for us. It's packed with iodine, fantastic for thyroid function, nutrients and antioxidants and fibre, which is great for the gut health. And you know how much I love gut health.
How you've managed to bring that back to gut health, only you could possibly do. Now, I know you're desperate to get into it. It does look fantastic. Thanks so much to the team at Lume and Elijah Holland for this great experience. If you want to find out more about it, go to our website, houseofwellness.com.au, and you can tune into the radio show, House of Wellness Radio, with our own Joe Stanley and GQ every Sunday. Thanks again, as always, to the team at Chemist Warehouse. Check out Lume, go and see Elijah Holland's fantastic work, and we'll see you next time.